Hello, and thank you so much for viewing this video on problem solution essay writing. My name is Justine Price O'Neill, and I am a writing and study skills tutor with Wake Tech's Tutoring and Learning Center. And I'm excited to talk with you today about problem solution essays, and hopefully you'll find this information helpful as you continue to work on improving your writing skills. In this video, we will explore how to effectively compose a problem solution essay. So we will first talk about the purpose of problem solution essay writing, and then we'll talk about how to choose an appropriate topic. Next, we'll talk about how to research the problem and then propose a solution to the problem. And then we'll talk about organization and how to structure this type of essay. And then we'll explore introductions and conclusions for a problem solution essay. And then we'll finish some final tips to help you be successful with this type of writing. Okay, so let's start talking about the purpose of writing problem solution essays. So for one, it helps you practice analyzing real world issues. These types of essays also help you practice proposing effective solutions. And problem solving is important both in your academics, but also within careers and everyday life. So it's an important skill to practice. These are some examples. Let's say if you were writing about plastic pollution in oceans, that would help you explore a global problem and then propose ways to reduce plastic waste. And this type of writing helps you tackle real world issues. So you might explore environmental or social problems, and it helps you improve analytical skills. And again, those are things that would be helpful for you in academics, but also within your career. Okay, so you can think about this question. What is a real world problem that you'd like to solve? And you might think about your particular interests, your specialized area of academic study, or the field that you want to have a career in someday, and think about what problems are relevant within that area and how might you go about solving such problems. When you start thinking about that, and you could do some brainstorming, that could lead you to a potential topic for this type of essay. So let's talk more about choosing a topic. These are some tips here. You would want to choose topics that are relevant to you personally, manageable for the scope of the essay, and interesting to you, because that's going to make it more interesting and exciting for you to write about. So to do that, you might consider local issues, right, in your community or, wider social network. You could think about personal experiences, your career field, like I mentioned earlier, or social topics that affect people. These are some examples that would be appropriate for problem solution essays, things like climate change, mental health on campus, or food insecurity. You want to make sure you know your audience and then tailor the topic to engage them. And here's an example for an essay aimed at college administrators. Choosing a campus related issue like improving mental health resources on campus could be really powerful. Okay, now let's talk about how to research the problem. So when you're finding sources, you want to make sure that you're using credible sources, things that are trustworthy, and these might be things that would explain the problem's background and the impact of the problem. So to gather evidence, you might look at academic journals, news articles, or expert interviews. And a really good way to find credible sources is by using the library's databases. There you can do a search like a Google search, but instead of just pulling up everything on the internet, it's going to pull up credible sources that are published somewhere in some library that you can access electronically via the Wake Tech Library. There, they will also provide citations for you, and it can be a really good way to find credible sources. Some assignments might actually say that the sources have to come from the library's databases, but you would want to look at your assignment sheet for details on what sources are allowed. And when you're looking for your sources, you want to be thinking about analyzing the problem. So looking at what are the causes, what are the effects, and what is the significance of this problem. You might change your search terms to use some of these different words in order to find the information that you're looking for. Okay, after you have explored the problem through your research, you can start thinking about proposing a solution. So, to do that, you want to think about realistic solutions that are things that could happen and realistically. And you want to make sure that they address the root cause of the problem. To do this, you might brainstorm multiple solutions and then choose the best one. You would also want to think about pros and cons of potential solutions. You could think about cost if that was applicable to your topic. You might think about the effectiveness of each solution and potential obstacles that you might have to overcome in order to make the solution possible. And then here's an example. If you were writing about reducing single-use plastics on campus, solutions could include things like reusable utensils, campus-wide recycling programs, or student discounts or reusable containers. Okay, so after you have explored the problem and the solution, you're ready to start thinking about the organization and structure of your essay. So again, it's really important to see your assignment sheet for details. Many times instructors will write a sample outline right on your assignment sheet to show you exactly how they want the essay organized. You would want to make sure that you're using specific evidence and data and examples to support your points about both the problem and the solution. And you might address counter arguments if required, or if you think that that would be helpful. So the counter argument is someone who would disagree with you, maybe disagreeing that this is a problem or disagreeing that your proposed solutions would work. Now, if your assignment sheet doesn't include specific details about how to structure your essay, this is an example basic outline that you might follow. So you would first have the introduction. We'll talk more about that in a bit, about what you would do in the introduction. Then you would have a paragraph or several paragraphs to describe the problem in detail and use your resources to do that. Next, you'd move to the solution. Here you might propose one solution, or you might propose several and then choose the best one at the end. You could then also explore the benefits of the solution, showing how that would look if this solution was to take place. And then you would close with your conclusion paragraph. Okay, let's talk about opening and closing the essay now. So for an effective introduction, you would first start with a hook. So the point there is, like most essays, you want to get the reader's attention right away. So rather than starting getting into your problem and your solution, you want to just introduce the idea in general to your reader. And you could do this with facts or stories or questions, some interesting information to start. Then you would get into the issue itself and provide background, any information the reader needs to know to kind of understand the issue before you delve into exactly what the problem is and the solution. And then you would end with your thesis statement. And your thesis would present both the problem and the solution, or multiple solutions if you have them, in one sentence. Next, in the conclusion, you would restate your problem. So you would restate you could get this from the thesis statement, but just make sure not to copy and paste your thesis, but say it in a new way, but remind the reader of what your main point was about the problem. And then you would go on to briefly summarize the solution or solutions that you presented, and again, remind us of those benefits. Finally, you'll close with a thought-provoking idea, or maybe a call to action is good for this type of essay. You want to end in a powerful way and give your reader a good final thought to keep in mind as they finish your essay. Okay, some final tips to keep in mind to be successful with a problem solution essay. Make sure that you're avoiding vague problems or impractical solutions. You want to make sure that your description of the problem is very specific and detailed, and that your solution is something that could be done effectively. Be sure to always back up your claims with evidence. So you want to support what your ideas are with details from your research. Be sure not to ignore any potential counter arguments or limitations. It's better to address those and then explain your reasoning why your point still makes the most sense. Always, always, always proofread and check for coherence. And to get help with that, you could seek feedback and use your resources. So you could come to the Tutoring and Learning Center. You might visit your instructor during their office hours. And you can also engage in peer review or get a family member or a friend to help look over your essay as well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our session on problem solution writing. I hope you've learned some helpful tips that you can take and use in your writing assignments. And remember that you can always reach out to us at the Tutoring and Learning Center for a one-on-one session with a tutor. You can visit our website that you see here and schedule a meeting via bookings, either in person or online. You can also reach out to us via this email address with any questions that you might have. Okay, so thank you again for viewing this video. I hope you learned some helpful tips, and we hope that we'll see you in the TLC. Have a good day.